Greetings all, and welcome to Everything Borrowed, where conversations are cultivated between myself and some of the greatest minds in a variety of industries. Today is presented to you by Blake's Hard Cider. Born on a third-generation farmstead, Blake's offers an adventurous exploration of the fruits of our labor. We're innovators embracing the sweet nectar from our soil. We're farmers that have been perfecting the apple for over 75 years, and I have to tell you, you need to get out to the store and buy this right away. It is going like hotcakes, folks. I was just looking at Nielsen IRI data, and we are the fastest growing hard cider company in the entire United States. This stuff's for real. You must be 21 to enjoy. Remember to enjoy the fruits of our labor mindfully. On today's episode, we have my dear friend, the amazing, talented Veronika Scott, who took a college art project and turned it into one of the nation's fastest growing nonprofits. The Empowerment Plan is a nonprofit based in Detroit that focuses on ending generational cycles of homelessness through employment. We had a great conversation, and I hope you guys enjoy the show. Veronika, hey, how are you? How you holding up? You're in New York right now?
I'm in New York. I'm in Ben's apartment. We're chilling.
So what's New York like right now? Is it like complete shutdown? Is it kind of coming back a little bit? I know Detroit here, the COVID, is spiking again. I know New York's kind of been a constant.
No, New York has been so much better than everyone else. Like New York is doing much better than after there was a crazy spike in March. But after that, New York took it way more seriously than anybody else did. And Cuomo did a very good job.
Yeah.
And so it's been interesting. The numbers definitely are in a steep decline. And here, like, there's not indoor dining. There's some outdoor dining stuff. It's weird. There's a lot more people here again. Like in March, it was empty, but now it's packed.
Yeah, and it's kind of going opposite here in Michigan. I was just in Ann Arbor, visiting one of our future bakehouse store locations, and Ann Arbor was just completely, like, I've never seen it like that. It was a ghost town, and whereas yeah, exactly. So it's just been crazy, the whole navigation of it. I know our team is exhausted just trying to, keep up week to week changes, and I think everyone's kind of getting fatigued, but everyone's got to stay diligent, and at least there's a vaccine of hope on the horizon, and maybe 2021 will be we'll at least halfway through we'll get back to normal. How's that affected what's going on in Empowerment Plan? I mean, have you guys had to completely shift operations? What's it look like from how you guys are handling business?
We had to shift everything again. I think this whole year has just been like, change this and then change that and then change again and then change, like, and that's fine. Like I think we're pretty agile as an organization, which is great. So like as a nonprofit, we have a lot of and all of our funders just made everything unrestricted, which was great because that allowed us to, like, if we need to shift money somewhere else, we could. Normally, so much money is just like tied up in certain commitments. So
Sure.
we stopped. We had to put a full halt to all hiring because all the shelters we work with had COVID outbreaks. Like they had a dozen or more people that had COVID, and we couldn't do that to our team. And it's hard to do when people are scared to get on a bus. Like it didn't make sense. But other than that, since the more recent kind of more intensive restrictions. So we opened up during the summer. We did PPE for a while. We made hospital gowns and surgical gowns. Then we stopped and just shifted back over to coats. And then we kind of opened up where people were coming in the office a little bit more. And then, the holidays hit and everything got much, much more strict. So what we have now is if you can work remote, you need to. And for everyone doing production, to make it like somewhat, at least try to be fair, because we can't stop production. We have to keep going. This too. You can't afford to shut down. You can't afford to shut down again like that. So what we do is we work every day to a number. Mm-hmm. So 35, 40 coats. Once that number is done, they prep for the next day, check for quality, and then everyone gets to go home. So around 1:00 each day, it's like 9 to 1. That way we're limiting contact in the building, and they don't have to take the bus during like peak hours if they have to take the bus, which is a small group.
Yeah, you notice I've talked to a lot of production outfits that have kind of went to this podding mentality where there's groups of people who have certain days and they only interact with that same group. So if there is an outbreak, it's more easily contained. But, and when you look at like a business plan, a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, all the stuff we learned about in school or that they tell you to do at your board meetings. It's kind of become like a 1 week, 2 week, 1 month plan. It's kind of how it's moved,
We have a plan through January at this point,
Right.
and like that's all we can have. And with our production team, what I didn't say is like they're only working till 1, but they're getting paid for the full day. So like we don't want people to get hit financially because they can like if we just cut our hours like that, people wouldn't be able to survive, like take care of themselves.
Right, and that's been the biggest challenge for us in our group and my family is we have 900 employees seasonally, and we have a growing base of of full-time employees, and just a commitment to try to keep everyone staffed and keep people productive and keep them safe. It's really kind of become the only plan, and then you get back to strategizing about the future. In the future, I guess.
We've talked about like doing a business plan for, once we hit our 10-year mark, which is like creating the business plan for 10 years and beyond. And it's just like right now we're like, so much has changed. We've learned a ton of stuff, which has been good. We've actually learned a ton of things about how we do our work. But I can't even get my head thinking to that point yet. I was just like, we gotta.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm hoping that there'll be a little bit of space between the weekly changes and the daily changes, and then get back to thinking strategically. But for people who don't really understand nonprofits, I don't claim to fully understand nonprofits. Can you walk us through a little bit of the differences as you see it of kind of operating a nonprofit in a business, and how that's different? For those in the audience who aren't as familiar, because I know I'm still learning all the ways in which nonprofits, can be, very, they can employ a lot of people, create a lot of jobs, and aren't necessarily just all for goodwill. You're really also committed to growing your team and your employees and all of that. And I think that's sometimes that's missed.
Well, I think people get confused around that. I think, a friend of mine tried to create something. It's like it's not a not profit and for profit. It's like for impact. Like your number one goal. Sorry if you're hearing anything in the background. You live in a 1-bedroom apartment with your partner. You kind of get the same calls at the same time. COVID.
If you see tractors, driving by, we're on the farm and we're outside shooting on the farm. So
It's really interesting. I like that terminology, but at the same time, I look at it and I'm incredibly biased, obviously, because I run a nonprofit. But I think it's that combination of running a good business. You run a business, and at the same time, it's not about making like you still need to make money. What makes it even harder than I think running a traditional business is like your money. It's not about how much we can sell of something where it's like a direct, you buy some cider, the dollars come in the door. For us, we have to figure out how to get the services out and then figure out the money from somewhere else. And that can be incredibly challenging because sometimes it doesn't line up the way that it should. Like, oh, here are the products and here's how much good we're doing. And you think sometimes that would equal out to dollars in the door. And like what's hard is like I would love to just like focus on the business itself and that growth and the people and the culture and the staff. But at the same time, I also have to be constantly fundraising. So it's not about just the work quality that went into it, like and operating the business. It's also simultaneously getting the money to operate it.
Sure.
And how you're classified as a nonprofit. It's like you have to have a social mission at your core. But what I love about a lot of businesses nowadays is a lot of them are hybrids of some kind, and they have social impact, built in, even though they're a for-profit. So I think there's like a bajillion ways to do it now.
Sure.
It's not as black and white as it used to be.
Sure. Well, when you mentioned, have a mission statement and impact, what is Empowerment's, mission statement? I think, for those of us who are close to it, we really know, but what is that statement for you guys?
For Empowerment Plan, it is to end generational homelessness through employment. And we do that by hiring homeless parents from shelters across the city of Detroit, and we employ them to produce a coat that turns into a sleeping bag that we give out globally to those in need. I think for us, the need is now, in particular, because of this year, astronomical, which is just devastating. Like the need for the product is huge.
And has your product, I know you guys have a global audience now and a global reach, and we'll touch back on this a little bit later because I think that you're a big part of why you've been able to impact so many people. And you talked about fundraising, and when you look on your guys' website, I mean, you have done a phenomenal job of getting the biggest and best minds in Detroit supporting your initiative. And I think you could write a book on the right way to do that. And obviously you have a great product and a great idea, but I think you're a great ambassador for the idea itself. But talk about a little bit of the fundraising aspect of that, because you seem to have really coalesced. I was doing an interview with James from Mabel Gray.
James Orgato, yeah, he's my boy.
He was rocking the empowerment shirt.
And he was? I know that. Oh my God.
He was on the interview. And it's very apparent to me that you have really kind of become part of the zeitgeist and the culture in Detroit, and you brought a lot of businesses together around a great cause. I mean, how do you do that?
How do you do?
People are looking for that, but is it the idea? Is it the hustle that your group has instilled in the mission? What has separated you guys? Because you guys are definitely, everyone knows who you are, and more people are learning. And how'd that happen?
So I think that's very flattering. Thank you. And I love James, and he's like a friend too. And I think it just takes a long time. Like I was told that in the beginning when I started, it just, to get some of the donors that we've been able to get and to get some of the people, like it just takes, I think, trust and time. And you can't have trust without the amount of time that you do it. I think there's been many people since Empowerment Plan began. We officially launched in 2012. So right at the week after I graduated college, Empowerment Plan started officially. But unofficially, it was a class project for like 2 years before that. And I think for us, it is making it, in the beginning, it was just me, and you have to sell yourself in the beginning because you just have an idea. There's nothing to really, there's nothing else there yet. So people have to buy into you. And I think that was like the 101 in like fundraising and business is like, people are buying into this person. They're buying into this idea that you can make it happen somehow. And for me, my personal story connected to the mission very closely. Like both of my parents have struggled with homelessness and poverty and addiction and mental health. And so for me, this is an opportunity that I wish my own family had been given. So this is, I had a lot of skin in the game from the get-go. And I think that's what helped sell it when they looked at me like, went to school for art and design. What in the world are you doing trying to setting up a sewing manufacturing facility? Like you have no experience in any of this. And then it has evolved over time. That fundraising strategy shifts. It becomes less about me and more about like, okay, now we've proven that we can do it. Like, look, we can do this thing.
Yeah.
And then also not getting like too ahead of yourself. Like so many people push us to grow and scale and to become so much bigger. And they try to push us past what we think we should do. And you just have to trust your gut, because at the end of the day, I think it's more important to be, I hate to say this, it sounds so cheesy, real and authentic and not commit to things that you cannot do than it is to be flashy and make a big splash.
I mean, you hit on something that I've always kind of put as a big staple of what we do here at Blake's is it's always about being authentic first, because consumers can be sold marketing pizzazz. They can be marketed to the best to the best of marketeers' abilities, but consumers are smart in the end, and they know what's authentic and they know what's not. And I think as we move our ideas of business, less centered around transactions and maybe a little bit more around the heart and really understanding where our products come from, where they're made, who they're made by, who founded the company. I think that's becoming more important to more people. And I do think that's your biggest selling point in anything that you do. And I think that's worked really well from us. our philosophy is from our backyard, so everything, inspired from our backyard. I grew up on a 1,000-acre apple orchard, fruit farm, and so it gives a lot of, it's a great muse of inspiration. And not that, as we scale, products, won't specifically come from our backyard anymore because we'll get too big for that, but they'll always be inspired and rooted, kind of in that tradition and where those products come from, and you don't lose that value. And I think that's, you got to take your authentic message and then find a way to also scale that, a little bit. And I think that, obviously, trying to end the cycle of homelessness is definitely, a model that can scale, because people, there's so much opportunity, I think, for that. I was doing an interview with Gary Gillum the other day, a former NFL player, and he said, we have systemic problems and we need to fix them with systemic empowerment. And, and he said, we could get into the culture, the race part, and why we have some of these problems, but the real solution is systemic empowerment. And I just found it interesting as I'm doing all of these interviews, there's this kind of common thread about that empowerment. And, you guys are so, poetically named the empowerment plan. I thought of you when he said that, and I'm like, that is right. That is what you do. No matter what side of the political aisle you're on, that's the right answer, I think.
And there's a space for like kind of like I hate to say it, there's like terminology like band-aid solutions. There's the space for that because you still need to take care of people that are like an emergency situation. But then I think we're getting better, and we're starting to realize that a lot of these band-aids, we're still dealing with the issues as they come up again. Like, we never really addressed the root problem. And when you talk about Detroit, you can't talk about Detroit and not talk about racism and segregation and the fact that it's such high poverty and unemployment. And I'm my family's from Detroit. My grandparents were like generations of my family. And so for me, it's you've got to look at the complexity of it. And for us, it was very hard to distinguish. Okay, so we have this emergency thing. We take care of people with the coats, but how do we simultaneously work upstream a bit and not just immediately take care of them with the jacket, but also how do we prevent them from ever having to need the product? And then, what does that even look down the road? What does that look like when we talk about how do we, prevent people from maybe tipping into homelessness, period? Right now we're focused on the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that are displaced, but is there a way to even move further up? So it's really exciting.
Yeah, and can you talk a little bit, for me about, the situation of homelessness, I guess, across the U.S.? You hear stories of, is there positive news? Is it getting better? Is it shifting just to different demographics? Is it getting worse? I'll claim my ignorance here, saying I don't fully understand, other than I hear, certain cities are becoming, kind of, meccas for homelessness, which doesn't sound like a great thing, but maybe they're heading to to better weather. But how do we get a better understanding of this, of homelessness as it is? And beyond supporting empowerment plan, what are things that we can do do you think we can do politically or even personally to help?
I think it is like a systemic thing. I agree with you. Like it is a systemic thing. And I wish, a year ago I could have said that like certain cities are doing really, really well with this, and they are looking at it. Like in Boston, for example, they have a one intake center model, which it sounds like it may not make sense, but as a city, if anybody is displaced on the streets, they know who that person is. There's like, they have that person has a name. They go out and they meet this person. They look at that person as an individual and say, okay, so what do you need? And not expect, and this is what we've done in the past, not expect the same solution to work for everyone. And I think you need to look at homelessness as an incredibly complex human thing where everybody is different. Everybody has a different story of what got them into the position that they are. It doesn't mean somebody's lazy. It doesn't mean somebody's addicted to drugs. It doesn't mean somebody went to prison. It doesn't mean any of those things. Some one person could have that story, but also they could have the story of they had their master's degree and they were running from domestic violence and they had no family and no one else to go to and they lost their job. Like, I could give you dozens of stories that where one is not even remotely similar to the other, but the outcome is that they are displaced and in a shelter. And I think we look at homelessness and we think that defines a person when it doesn't. It doesn't tell you anything about that person. And so when we look at across the US right now, we just have a very broken and scattered system. We don't really take care of the individual well. And so what Boston is doing, which I like, is that one person will go and get to talk with 12 different organizations. And all these organizations have different areas where they're really good at helping people, whether it's mental health, whether maybe this person just needs an employment opportunity, maybe this person needs inpatient treatment for something. And they're able to actually see this person, see the individual issues, and work on it, and then go from there. And because of that, they got rid of all of, they were able to house and take care of every single homeless vet. They have 0 homeless veterans. And I think that shows you the potential of letting nonprofits, letting service industries be good at what they're good at, and make sure that you have like a centralized care where people don't have to go to 70 different organizations. Like,
is the Boston model, is that funded by, the state officials, local officials, or is it all, nonprofit based, and, or, who's driving the strategy in Boston?
I think it's like a city government initiative where like people in the city realize that like we just need to communicate with each other. The thing is, like, we can't just all be off in our own little silos working and like potentially serving the same people without knowing it. And that's a huge problem. And then also missing a ton of other people. And so I think when they did a study that in Chicago, it took one single woman going to over 70 different organizations to get out of poverty. 70. I don't even know of 70 organizations. And that shows you how broken and scattered everything is.
One of the reasons why we started this podcast was not only to find amazing entrepreneurs and amazing people and share their stories and borrow some good ideas, but it's also because there's this idea, at least this observation that I feel, is that conversations across the board almost on any topic have become so siloed, and you're not really, I don't know if it's social media, I don't know if it's the pandemic, but things have become so kind of in their own echo chambers that as you're kind of talking about how 70 organizations to solve one problem, shouldn't that be one global initiative that has 70 different moving parts all working, for one end goal, where you have all these kind of separate goals that are kind of working individually and not a part of a more holistic approach. And I feel that that's where we have to kind of turn inwards and look at how we communicate and how we're working together with, state, local, for-profit businesses, nonprofit businesses, because for me, out in Armada, I'm getting very involved in kind of our local school district, because for me it all starts with kids. The more we can educate, the more we can push entrepreneurship and leadership, and we can create good humans out of the youth that they're going to be our our saving grace, probably not us. We're already kind of damaged to some degree, and so we have to really work on them. At least I am. and I really think that is part of this whole kind of empowerment idea that at least you've inspired me to some degree to kind of take ownership in my own area and contribute in a way that at least is pertinent to my local community a little bit. So thank you for that inspiration, by the way.
I agree with what you're saying, that this is, I don't want to say that we're too far gone ever, because I think for me, I think that's what people get kind of weird about, like founders. Like I like telling my story and like sharing that like I came from the background that's similar to people that we serve, because I don't want to alienate anybody from thinking that they can do this, because I don't have like some weird special gene that makes me the right person to found this organization. There's a lot of people out there that can make incredible impact, but feel like they're not the right people to do so, like that they don't have the right things. And I think about like when you say, what can people do to get involved? Like, yes, donating to Empowerment Plan is incredible. But I also think there's many ways, whether it's, especially now, unemployment is at an astronomical high. There's like, whether you are in a company that could hire somebody, that's powerful. Or you could just like bake something for someone else. Like, it is very simple. There's so many ways, no matter what income level, what experience you have, or you can do something to give back in your neighborhood and in your community. I think people look and want to look at like other communities that need help, and really there's so much even just in their few block radius that could be powerful. That's why I'm from Detroit, and I think why we've had success in Detroit is that's my home. That's where I live. That's where I've been living. Like, it's where my family grew up. And I know you know that almost.
Yeah.
You're on your farm with your family with 1,000 acres of land. I think that's opens up a whole realm of possibilities of ways that you can help. I don't want people to limit themselves.
Sure. Is there an ultimate solution when you look at how we really, cut out homelessness? I just feel in the year 2020 going in 2021 that homelessness, like, we should have mastered this. We should have had programs in place that really help support this and support, the mission. Is this something that's solved, at the government level, ultimately, or is this something, is it, you look at some of the right side of the aisle, the Republicans, and it's all, it's empowerment at the individual level, and got to really support, individual entrepreneurial, empowerment to get, to create generational wealth and get people out of the cycles of poverty. Is that the solution? Is it a full government solution? Is it a mix of, a government initiative with, private enterprise really supporting and industries? Is it an economic solution to the issue of poverty, or is it more than that? Because you hear a lot of people at the, at different dinner tables argue that, it's an economic issue that will solve, the homeless crisis. And I don't know, you hear parts of those arguments, and, you can buy into them to some degree. And then at some degree, I feel like, but we gotta set people up for success, and that's on us as a society to work on, in my opinion.
I agree. I think there's, if we could solve this in a podcast, I think we'd win the Nobel Prize. I think that's great.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I think we could, but there's countries that do it in a better way. And I think it does start off with government and investing. And I think at this point, investing in people in that way. And I agree we do not set people up for success, and we're not all at the same starting point. Like, a lot of the people that we see at Empowerment Plan have grown up in poverty. I grew up in poverty. Do you know how hard it is to break? And it was hard for me, and I'm so incredibly lucky, and I have so many incredible people in my life. For those people, for many, many, many people, they don't have those kind of resources. They don't have that privilege that I had of having grandparents that cared about me, that took me in and invested in my education. That's 1 in a million kind of thing right there. When you look at how many people are starting off having been raised in a shelter. Like the shelters we work with, they've seen generations of the same family in that shelter. And it is devastating. Not only do you know the grandmother, the mother, the child, and that is a problem that is not just up to the economic side. It's not just up to the nonprofits. It's not just up to the corporations and things of that nature. It needs to be a bigger shift. It needs to be something where we understand that this is a holistic thing. You can see little bits of it happening in cities, but it needs to be a bigger investment in the whole, understanding the whole person.
Who's doing it right? The Swedes, they seem, the Nordic countries, who's doing it right? Because
Nordic countries are great.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, they're kind of like the default go-to on a lot of these social programs, but who's the model that we should be, or that we could be modeling after?
Well, I think it's hard because you can say to another country, but culturally we're very different.
Sure.
The same model, even for Empowerment Plan, as we talk about, people want us to come into their cities. It's okay, well, Detroit culturally is different than Chicago culturally, and the needs of Chicago is different than the needs of somebody in Detroit. Even just in the Midwest, and I think that's really important to make the distinction of there are countries that have been doing this very well, and a lot of Norway is a great example. But it's that understanding, they have that of the whole person, of supporting somebody through good pre-K to like food insecurity and understanding that, to like, educational resources and working with that person and following them through their entire life. They have incredible educational opportunities. So it's like, it's not one thing.
Sure.
It's looking at how you design the whole system. And for us, we could look at somebody that's doing it really well, but it would have to then be customized for how different we are as a culture and as a country.
Sure. Would ending the war on drugs and changing our idea in the way in which we we criminalize drug use and put people away for nonviolent reasons, would that make a dent in the homeless community and changing that, as far as empowering people and keeping people out of jails and into society with their family and friends? I always felt like that was such an archaic way of trying to band-aid a problem, to put someone who's hurting, obviously escaping through drugs or alcohol or whatnot, and just put them in a cell by themselves without their loved ones around. To me, that never made sense, and I was curious, is that would that be a piece in this overall strategy, is kind of relooking at that?
That's also another complicated thing, but all of these are great questions.
No.
But I think for me, it's frustrating, and you can see this systemic racism there of like wanting to keep poor people, particularly Black, like individuals that were get like put in prison for their entire lives for drug offenses that somebody else would not even like serve a night in prison for. And even now, there are people that have spent their entire lives or years and years of their life unable to potentially get a job after, be able to hold out, like all sorts of things go out the window that somebody now runs a business doing, which is mind-boggling to me. It's like, wait, so you still have people in prison that are serving time, even now after it's legal, that somebody is making money off of right now, completely legal, full fine. They have a billboard on the freeway for, like, what? How is this okay? And so there's a lot that we have to think about, which is,
I feel like we need a whole update to the operating system. I feel like we're a computer, we're like a computer that's like had a lot of outdated software with old archaic, ways in which we look at some of these problems. And like our generation or the younger generation below us needs to come in and kind of say, we need to we need to get to 4.0 or 5.0 with some of our philosophies about these issues, because they just feel that they're outdated. All of the our operating system that we're kind of working in as a society is a little bit slow to keep up with where we need to be as a society and as a humanity.
And I believe in like the government's ability, like, because I know it doesn't have to be archaic. I think there are things that do work. I think there are things that if we're just properly invested in, they could even work even better.
Right.
I just was at a national park. I love the national parks. They're incredible.
Yeah.
And like, that's an incredible system that employs thousands and thousands of people. And like, you just think about these things that were set up and, protecting the environment, but that also employ people that also do these things. So I think there are ways to do it. And I think it's going to have to, like, we have to break away from the idea, I feel like personally, as a founder, of this like founder savior thing, that there's one person that's going to come in and they're going to be so inspiring and so incredible that they're going to fix everything. And it's like, no, there's no one person, one like fix thing, like this idea, particularly just like of this savior mentality that, oh, like I'm waiting for somebody else to come in and do it. I don't have to do anything. I'm going to wait for this one person, this one, again, visionary, heavily used terms, to like fix it. And it's like, no, like a visionary on their own, they're terrible. They need like a ton of other people to make things happen. Just a bunch of visionaries sitting in a room would get zero things done.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
Yeah, you need the visionary, you need the implementer, and you need a lot of supporting cast that kind of keep things on track. And I think that's a very kind of astute point. And I do think that we need to kind of understand that I think progress is just painfully slow, and it's happening, and you have to understand it's kind of a collaborative painful, slow process at the moment, but progress, I do feel is being made in a lot of these ways, and just the way we're able to communicate our problems, through mediums like this, and just organizations such as yours. I mean, you've been on national TV, USA Today. You were on USA Today, right? I mean, you guys have
USA Today. We're on Good Morning America, CNN. We've gotten incredible press, and year after year, which blows my mind, because I've always okay, we get 15 minutes of it. That's it. That's all that's going to happen, and then it's going to die down. But every year, somehow, people still resonate with the story, and this is what you were talking to, from all kind of political ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And that's what I find really fascinating, is that somebody, that is, a Republican next to a very a liberal Democrat, they both they support empowerment plan, and they both do, which I find fascinating. And it's kind of what are those similarities? Why do you care about the people that we serve, and why do you care? We all want to see an investment and improvement of this population, and we want to support people in Detroit that have been trapped in systemic poverty. We want to make a difference. So it's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
I found that really fascinating.
Yeah, and we're kind of in the same boat, on the not to make a parallel to farmers and what you do, but it's kind of there's a ton of Democratic farmers, there's a ton of Republican farmers, and both sides of the aisle like farmers and support farmers. So we're lucky, to kind of have that kind of one of the few things that's not overly political. And I do think you see that, you talk to business people, they want to help they have a different philosophy on how to help. You talk to entrepreneurs in a lot of ways, Republicans, they want to help. They have a different philosophy than people on the left and Democrats. And I think if the idea is right and people want to help, then that's good enough for me. Let's just sit around a table and meet each other in the middle a little bit about a little give and take, and I think that's ultimately where we want to get to. I did want to ask you a little bit. You guys have obviously came out with this coat, and you partnered with Carhartt to a degree to to kind of bring these to fruition. When you look at empowerment plan, do you see in increasing your SKUs, if you will, or the opportunity that you have to help support the homeless community? Do you see yourself expanding your product line in this mission, and what's the future of empowerment plan look like, as other than on the way to getting through ending homeless through employment, what is the future? I know we talked about not having a whole lot of time this year to think about 3, 5, 10 years, but what's that look like for you?
Again, I think a lot of things have changed because of this year. I think we're still kind of recognizing how many things have shifted because of it now. But I think at the core, our mission is still the same. And when it comes to product SKUs, well, we kind of did. We added, hospital gowns and surgical gowns to our product SKUs this year, which was unexpected. But it was everyone on our team and everyone on our board and all of our donors felt the same way about it. It's we are serving an immediate need in the community with these hospital gowns. It may not be for the same population, but the product serves a social good that we're able to continue to employ the people that we employ and also serve this need in the community, which was critical and dire at that point. So I think for us right now, we're sticking to coats, but I think that leaves us open. After having experienced what we did doing PPE, we are open to kind of the similar call to action if there is a need. I don't know right now. There's definitely products that could be designed, but we don't even feel like we've scratched the surface of the first product. Right. If you think we do distribution globally, we've done distribution across the entire US and now 21 other countries. It's a question of if we're looking at this as a global standpoint, I don't know when we hit that kind of threshold. But we're open to it. I think that's what was really interesting about this year. We learned that we could do it. We could have multiple lines of things running, and we can adapt. So, for the future for our empowerment plan, we're still figuring out if it means, just growing in one location, working on the policy side, expanding the way that people support not just like our team, but on a state or national level, how they.
I think you should get into politics. I think you should get involved in the policy side. You'd be a great ambassador.
Me. I didn't need me as an individual.
Yep.
Thank you.
That's interesting. And, when you talk about, your distribution thus far, I mean, have you, how many, I was looking on your website, how many coats have you guys, distributed since your inception?
We're close to like 45,000, close to 50,000 coats since the beginning. We did like under 1,000 coats the first year. It was like 3 people in a utility closet.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And, we've, if people want to get involved and they want to, donate, they want to understand what empowerment's doing, how do listeners get involved?
Yeah, you can find us at empowermentplan.org. You can also look up like Detroit. We also come up, apparently people look up coats in Detroit often, so which is great. But, empowermentplan.org is a way to support, whether it's like, you want to get a coat to somebody in need, or you want to support getting, a sewing kit or pay for a GED class for somebody. Like, I think there's many ways to get involved, less in person this year than normal,
Sure, right.
Obviously, but I think there are still many ways to give back. We have people that don't have the checkbook themselves, but will actually create fundraisers with their church or with their family, or do it over the holidays to get coats into their cities as well, which is really cool. We have like a lot of like young kids that do that, which is incredible. So yeah, gives me hope for the future. I wasn't doing that stuff when I was 11. Are you kidding me?
Right. I know. I'm very optimistic about our future. I think we got to bridge the gap for the next few years, and people like you are doing a great job, kind of inspiring and keeping us on on a positive track, and seeing that the progress is being made amongst all the chaos and commotion. And I just want to thank you for your time. I know how busy you are, and really, really appreciate it. And make sure next when you're back in Michigan, look me up, and you and Ben come out, and we'll have some drinks.
We'll have some cider. This is my favorite. Ben will be so excited. He'll love it.
Well, hey, thank you. You're a huge inspiration to me and a lot of people in Detroit, and really appreciate you taking the time with us.
It was awesome. Thanks for having me.
Catch you soon, Veronika. Thanks. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you remember that everything in life is borrowed, so make sure to love hard, work hard, stay humble, and help each other out along the way. Find and subscribe to more of Everything Borrowed episodes through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. If you really want to make our day, drop us a 5-star review so more people can find the work we're sharing. Stay up to date with weekly articles on business, life, and my interactions with amazing entrepreneurs and creators at everythingborrowedpodcast.com. EBP is produced by Chelsea Cox and Jason Brown. Edited and filmed by Nick Ferguson. Art is produced by Adam Yarbrough. Everything Borrowed is an after-hours media production. Copyright 2020.